Okay, so the next crisis that the Weimar Republic had to face was in 1920, and that's associated with the so-called Kapp Putsch. Kapp is the name of the General Kapp, and Putsch means attempt to seize power. So essentially, you have a similar situation to Russia, where you have Tsarist generals who raise a rebellion, General Kolchak, General Denikin, and they march on Moscow. In Germany, Kapp is in Berlin. He basically organized the troops around the capital and tried to seize power. And he actually did seize power for a few days. But then the Social Democrats and the Communists, they did what happened in Russia during Kornilov Putsch. The workers' detachments just kind of armed themselves and began to fight against the general, and then there was a general strike. The whole city was paralyzed by workers' action, and the Kapp Putsch collapsed. So it was one more reminder that neither the leftist putsch nor the rightist putsch succeeded. In other words, you have the communist uprising in Bavaria suppressed, and then you have the Kapp putsch suppressed. The Weimar Republic survived. The democratic form of government through the representative institutions of the Reichstag, the parliament, survived these two blows. However, what is going to come next is perhaps the most painful memory associated with the Weimar Republic, and that is called the hyperinflation, 1922. So the hyperinflation is the cause, but what really caused the hyperinflation is French occupation of the Ruhr or Rhineland, French occupation of the Rhineland. So why does that happen? It happens because the Germans are unable, this is their explanation, unwilling is the French explanation, to pay reparations. There's this very heavy load of payments that they have to do in accordance with Versailles Treaty, and they are not doing it to the satisfaction of the French. So the French decide that instead of monetary payments, they would take coal directly by themselves from the Ruhr area, from Rhineland in the west. And they send in the troops and they occupy a big part of Germany, almost up to Frankfurt, in a direct military occupation, and they begin to pump coal out of Germany, which is a triple humiliation. First of all, this territory is no longer controlled by the German government. It is under direct occupation. The Germans are forced to salute French officers, and when they don't, they are beaten or humiliated. It just absolutely enrages the German public opinion that the French treat Germany as if it was some African colony where they could come and do whatever they want and extract natural resources as they did in Morocco. It absolutely infuriates them, and the German government refuses to pay anything at all. It just stopped all the payments, and since the payments are done in Reichsmarks, which is a German currency, what they do is they begin to print more and more money, and then these Reichsmarks become meaningless. Essentially, it's absolutely absurd. You would have to have stacks and stacks of money to pay a loaf of bread. There were so many of these Reichsmarks around that they were absolutely worthless. You could just put them as wallpaper. I mean, it was ridiculous loss of value of the currency, which is called hyperinflation. The problem with hyperinflation is that it didn't just stop the payments to the French, it basically made everybody poor. If you had any savings in German currency, in Reichsmarks, they become absolutely waste of your resources. It's worth less, and that basically makes everybody poor. And that devastates the economy more than the French occupation. So the French occupation and the hyperinflation shows you what a difficult period the young German Republic had to come through. On top of it comes the next big trouble. This is 1923, and that is called Ludendorff-Hitler Putsch. So, as you recall the names, Ludendorff is the famous general of World War One, who actually defeated the Russian army in World War One, who is the genuine victorious general in the East, and probably one of the most talented generals in World War One. He is, of course, politically active, very nationalistic, very bitter about the loss of the war. He is one of the authors of the stab in the back theory. And then he links up with Hitler. And who is Hitler in 1923? Hitler is a leader of a group of people who have created a party, which is 1919, which is called the German National Socialist Workers Party. They are funded by the military, by the army, and the core of supporters is from the veterans. One could say there is a kind of link between the Freikorps, the veteran organization of 1919, and the creation of a new political party, which is called National Socialist Workers Party. Hitler was not originally one of its members, but he was pretty much a nobody, an artist. By the way, he is an artist. I saw his paintings, and they're not bad at all. There are quite a few. He's a genuine artist. It's not just, he liked to draw some things. No, he has a whole lot of quite interesting paintings. So he's a kind of an artist. He's a corporal in World War One. He's basically a nobody. One of those people who have flooded the streets and have nothing to do after World War One. But then he begins to go to the beer pubs, as many Germans do, and he begins to speak. And the more he speaks, the more people like it. And not just any people, but people who are veterans and who are patriotic and who resent the loss in World War One. And he is increasingly popular. And the army notices him. The army generals, the leaders of the Freikorps and all this party, they think, oh, there's this guy who speaks really well. So one could really say Hitler begins his political career because he is a speaker. As a matter of fact, just like Trotsky and just like Mussolini. I mean, this is the age of great speakers, orators. Now, Hitler begins to speak in the beer pubs. And basically, the themes are always the same. Germany won the war and it was deceived by the stab in the back, by the socialists and the Jews. And there will come a time when we will stick it back to the French and the socialists and the British and the Russians and everybody who humiliated Germany. In other words, he's beginning this rhetoric, but it's not really that much about the French and the Russians. It's a whole lot about the domestic situation, which is against the socialists, the communists, and the Jews. And it is very much anti-capitalist. It says it's a socialist group, and it is nationalist. So these two words really mean quite a lot. They're nationalist in the sense that they're for humiliated Germany. They're socialist is because they're against unfairness of capitalism, but they're not like the communists who want to be friends with the French and for proletarians all over. No, they don't want to be friends with anybody but the Germans. It's going to be national socialism, which is just for one country. In some way, it's similar to what Stalin used to say in his argument with Trotsky, and is socialism is in one country. Trotsky wanted socialism all over the world. Stalin says, no, we're going to have socialism in one country. So there's an echo in this, in Hitler's rhetoric, that is going to be national socialism, for nationalism just for Germany. So he becomes very, very popular, and by 1922 he's a kind of a figure that is known throughout Germany. with his as a political leader, like many others. There are many other political leaders, but he becomes one of relatively well-known political figures. And then in 1923, they link up Ludendorff and Hitler. And in a famous photograph, they march together in the streets of Munich. Hitler is in the white trench coat, and that they're trying to seize power. Now, whether they actually try to seize power or not is not known, but what is known is a march. They march along the streets, and then the police actually attacks them. And it's very quickly suppressed, and they blame them of a coup against the state, and they're put on trial. And Ludendorff gets off with virtually nothing. He's released. He's so popular in a month or two, and Hitler gets a prison sentence, I believe, of 5 years. Of those, he's going to serve 2 or 3. So he's put in jail, but his jail, of course, is like a luxury hotel. He's got newspapers and telephone, and friends can come and visit him. It looks more like house arrest, not really jail term. We should leave the story of Hitler for a while, because that's not what's really most important in 1923. There's a period which is called relative stabilization, 1924, 25, 26, 28, 27, 28, and things begin to worsen in 29. And they really go completely collapse after the American crash, the stock exchange crash of 1929. So the period that comes up now is the 4 years from 1924 to 28 that are good years, the years of stability, prosperity, and great hope that Weimar Republic may survive, and there may be a good future for Germany without the cataclysms of Hitler's rule. So these years are associated with Chancellor Stresemann. His name is Stresemann. And we'll stop at that moment because that would be a separate topic. It's years of stabilization, 1924-28.